Dairon Blanco made the most of his start tonight in Anaheim, but is it something you can count on moving forward? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm Coach Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can find us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. Today's show is brought to you by one of the most popular mobile games out there in Monopoly Go. It's available in the App Store and the Google Play Store, so go over and download it today and start playing your friends, start playing random people. Doesn't matter. It's a lot of fun, especially if you're a Monopoly junkie like myself. So go download it today or after this podcast so you don't click away from this and get sidetracked. But if you want to know a little bit more about myself, where I come from, I've been based here in Kansas City for quite some time now. I grew up here. I work over at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some producing, some co-hosting, and some hosting as well. I was trying to get all three down there before we move into our first segment tonight, but stay very busy over there in the sports world. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you are getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And at least for tonight, because I know the West Coast road trip is going to trickle into next week, I'll try not to get these episodes up in the wee hours of the morning, but unfortunately, due to some work stuff, some extra stuff after work, and just activities, didn't really have time to do this before the game. And I thought if I rushed it before the game, then I'm getting it out right at first pitch. And that wouldn't have made much sense because by the time you would watch this podcast, we wouldn't have had any updates from the game. So it would have been useless at that point. So I wanted to wait till you had the outcome of tonight's game, for better or for worse. And it ended with the Royals taking game one in Anaheim 10-4. It was never close. There was a moment in the seventh inning where the Angels were just basically taking walks because Michael Wacha was getting squeezed, and then he was missing badly to walk some guys to bring in some runs. But then Daniel Lynch came in and played hero ball. Daniel Lynch has really been impressive since joining the Royals last Sunday. He had the 5-inning shutout against the Texas Rangers on Sunday. Should have gotten the win, but the bullpen blew it. And tonight he comes in and saves the rest of the bullpen and keeps Michael Wacha's quality start intact, which probably didn't matter too much to him. I'm sure he was frustrated about the outcome tonight, but it made his line look a hell of a lot better than what it could have been if Daniel Lynch didn't do his job. And so at least, maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow, but at least that shows you he's worth considering keeping in that bullpen. I mean, Matt Sauer didn't look great, and Matt Sauer hasn't looked good now for the last couple outings. Is this a situation where you send him back to New York, or do you just option Tyler Duffy back to Omaha? I actually don't know if he's got any minor league options, but maybe there's some push now to keep Daniel Lynch in Omaha, or keep Daniel Lynch in Kansas City instead of going to Omaha. But we'll find that decision out tomorrow when the Royals activate Alec Marsh to make his start in game 2 against the Angels. But the story of tonight was the offense. The offense was really just on a tear after the third inning. It felt like every single time the Angels threw a pitcher out there, they were able to time him up in some way, shape, or form. A lot of multi-hit nights for guys. Michael Garcia had 3. Salvador Perez had 2. Vinny Pasquantino had just a moonshot into that alleyway in right field at Angel Stadium. Bobby Witt Jr. was hitless. Some of the guys at the bottom of the order weren't productive, but one guy that was Dairon Blanco. Dairon Blanco had a home run to kickstart this offense to make it 2-0 off of Reed Detmers, and then he was only a triple away from the cycle. He had reached base, I think, 4 times now that I think about it. He had a bunt single, a home run, a double late in the game. Might have not had a walk now that I think about it, but scored 4 runs and played just fine in left field. And the reason I wanted to kick off this segment, one, because I know it's going to catch the eye, right? not going to bury the lead of this game, which was, in my opinion, Dairon Blanco playing the way that he did. And Dairon Blanco had 6 hits coming in tonight. He had half that in this game alone. I also understand that the Angels are a very bad baseball team. And to tie in to this Blanco segment, the ninth inning tonight got a little bit, shaky for Matt Sauer. And some fireworks actually almost started. He had hit Joe Adell on the hand. Obviously wasn't trying to. And then it kind of come up and in on Zach Neto. And I remembered that Zach Neto last year got upset when Ryan Yarbrough hit him with a 68-mile-an-hour curveball and back-to-back at-bats. And Ryan Yarbrough was like, why would I hit you intentionally with a 68-mile-an-hour curveball? So there might have been that, anger. But the reason I'm saying this is, Ron Washington and the Angels dugout was barking at Matt Sauer, and Salvador Perez kind of had to calm him down. But that was not because they thought he was throwing intentionally. It was a mix of, get your bleep together, don't be hitting our guys, and we're also pretty pissed off that this is how we're playing. Not only this game, but over the course of the season. I mean, they've already put themselves in the basement next to Houston, surprisingly, in the American League West. Seattle and Texas and probably Houston are going to be the top 3 teams in that division. And it's been a tough first 40 games for Ron Washington. So to tie that back in, Dairon Blanco is not doing this against the New York Yankees, not doing this against the Braves or the Dodgers. He did it against a very bad baseball team. And a baseball team the Royals should, and I highlight should because you never know in this game, but take 3 of 4. I mean, you would be gunning for a 4-game sweep, but we all know in baseball that beating a team 4 times in 4 days is incredibly difficult to do. So Blanco did probably the one thing he needed to do, which was just get a hit. I would say have some sort of value at the bottom of the order, get a hit, steal a base, and he did so much more than that. And I think it at least brings up the question, can Dairon Blanco play more than just once a week, if that at times, or just against lefties? Because my argument would have been you don't want to overexpose a guy. You don't want to put this guy in a spotlight and say he's going to be fixed, because Dairon Blanco, just his overall status, his talent level at the plate, he's not going to be the everyday fix in right field. But I look at that spot and see Hunter Renfroe hitting what he's hitting. And defensively, he's got a great arm, but doesn't have the best range. I wonder if maybe Dairon Blanco, for the time being, could take that spot a little bit more than what he's been doing. I mean, today he was in left field because MJ Melendez isn't apparently going to be playing against lefties for right now while he's dealing with this slump. Even Garrett Hampson started in center field tonight over Kyle Isbell. So there are opportunities because of how often Matt Quatrero shakes up that lineup. But I think there are so many things that Dairon Blanco does well that make him an intriguing option. I mean, he is not going to be somebody that hits north of 300. He's not going to be somebody that runs into 5 to 10 to 15 home runs, but he does have pop. We saw the pop last year. In fact, he was inches from the cycle, the first cycle since George Brett last year. I really liked what he did defensively last year. We know the type of player he is on the base paths. I mean, he could probably swipe 30 to 35 bags just being a pinch runner alone. But I do think it is something worth considering, not to get caught up in what he did tonight, not to have the recency bias and go, Dairon Blanco is so much better than what they got out there, because, that's the foolish thing to do. Just putting him out there, overexposing him. But I do wonder, even if Dairon Blanco doesn't take that spot and thrive, you could make a case it's still better than what they're getting from Hunter Renfroe. Maybe you look to the minor leagues. Maybe you look at Drew Waters. I know we had a couple Mailbag Friday questions that I already got into reading. I know I cheated on that. I usually say I don't read the questions before we do the episode. Some caught my eye, and I just, I saw the response, and it naturally popped up on my feed. But Dairon Blanco came up a few times as well. Is Drew Waters going to be the long-term fix? Who knows? Is it going to be somebody like Jazz Chisholm? A Bleacher Report put out a mock trade that was just awful, but it had Jazz Chisholm going to the Royals. So is it an outside piece, a trade candidate? Or do you just look in-house right now and say, man, maybe Dairon Blanco does deserve more at-bats? He did a lot tonight. I thought he had a really clean stroke. He's just dynamically fast. It's absurd how fast he's right next to Bobby Witt Jr. is the fastest guy on the team. And I think he plays a fine left field. It's at least worth considering, not just a one-game sample size, but the tools he gives you. I almost think that, you could look at him maybe playing 2 or 3 times a week and splitting that until Hunter Renfroe either gets hot or they just settle into this platoon role, even though both of them are righties. You just get a different look out there in the outfield. You get speed over the raw power that Hunter Renfroe has. But let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or let us know your thoughts on Twitter. Again, you can send them over to me at JohnnyJ_15. Okay, for our next segment, let's dive into tonight's starting pitcher and what we made of Michael Wacha's outing. Now, he got a quality start, but the 7th inning was a near disaster, and all of a sudden, he had lost that control. Is this something that he can build on? And I'm going to give you a stat from last year that might keep you a little bit more hopeful about what Wacha can do the rest of the way. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter X at JohnnyJ_15 and find us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and we are on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. Let's give a shout out to a couple of the sponsors today, starting with DoorDash. Now, with DoorDash, do you want to make mom smile, start Mother's Day with flowers, or surprise her with gifts from the brand she loves, delivered the very same day to DoorDash? This Mother's Day, you can get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash, and you can surprise her with wherever you get your fresh bouquets, the latest technology, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. So here's what you need to do. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order and up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order. Now with Locked On MLB, that's Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB. Order using DoorDash today. And again, those terms apply. We also want to give a shout out to our title sponsor today and one of the more popular mobile games out there in Monopoly Go, where you can team up with your friends for time tournaments, where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get, such as unique stickers, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go and download it now on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Well, Michael Wacha was certainly on his game for the first 6 innings of tonight's outing against the Los Angeles Angels. Going into tonight, he had only had 9 total runs of support in his previous 7 outings. So we knew that Michael Wacha didn't have the best ERA. He didn't have the best numbers. But the offense wasn't giving him much breathing room. The offense wasn't giving him much to work with. They weren't giving him any cushion. And tonight, that was the complete opposite. The Royals had given him 9 runs going into that 7th inning, where it sort of slipped away from him. It unraveled a little bit for Michael Wacha. But I did think, even though the lineup he was facing, how we kind of tied it in with Dairon Blanco of, he was 3 for 4, but it was against really bad pitchers at some point in that game. Not everybody. I mean, Reed Detmers does have a track record. Amir Garrett wasn't great in that game, but I don't think Dairon Blanco faced. Oh, he did face Amir Garrett, I believe. And then they did get the strikeouts. I think they had 12 or 13 strikeouts against Royals hitters tonight, but 10 runs is 10 runs, right? But Dairon Blanco did what he was supposed to do, and Michael Wacha, to me, did what he was supposed to do. He was facing a bad lineup, and he got through the first 6 innings without really breaking a sweat. He'd had the swing and miss. His velo was up. Good buddy Joel Penfield of the KC Sports Network and co-host of One Royal Way had brought up that, his fastball was sitting about 94.2, I think it was, which was up from 92.9. I know I'm kind of ballparking it right there, but the velocity was up and it looked good. And even though it didn't really end the best, I think it's something you can build on a little bit. At the end of the day, Michael Wacha is not seen as being the guy to anchor this rotation. He's not going to be Cole Reagans. He's not going to be at least what Seth Lugo looks like right now. Michael Wacha tonight, it's just fine by me if he does that once every 3 starts. Just 6 innings, 3-run ball. Maybe you ask for a little bit more. I don't need to see a ton more than that. I think if you just gave 6 innings, 3-run ball, and on the off nights, it's 5 innings and 4 runs, that's still doing your job, in my opinion. You can't have what happened against Texas, where you're shelled in the 2nd inning, you give up, 4 runs or something like that, and overall it was 7 runs before you'd even hit the 4th inning. It was ugly. It was really, really ugly for Michael Wacha. So he needed that bounce back start. He needed that start to go, right, I can build off this a little bit, even if it was a bad team. Right? Baseball's tough. Some guys can get you. The Angels have a lot of unknown guys in the lineup. You may not know how to pitch to them just yet. We saw the Royals last year catch fire a little bit in September because a lot of the guys they were playing, there wasn't much of a book on them. And then once the league figures it out, it gets a little bit more tough. But the Angels, they were playing without Mike Trout. They no longer have Shohei Ohtani. Anthony Rendon is hurt. So you're not seeing the stars, if you will, of the Anaheim Angels. But Michael Wacha, through 6 innings, showed just how good he can be against a bad lineup. And then in that 7th inning, he got squeezed a little bit, and I thought then let it mentally affect him. He was kind of chirping with the umpire, clearly frustrated, visibly frustrated. Body language, to be the old head there, like a coach, the body language wasn't the best, and I think that impacted him, letting that outing slip away from him. But Daniel Lynch was just awesome, and coming in relief, had one of the more impressive double plays that I had seen a pitcher make. I don't care if it was a righty or lefty. And if somebody brought up, I think Zach Greinke had done that. Well, when you're getting compared to Zach Greinke fielding-wise, who had won many gold gloves at that position, you're doing something right. But Michael Wacha, in the end, he strikes out 6, walks 5, and only gives up 3 runs in 6 innings. That's a quality start and number 19 on the year for the Kansas City Royals. But that stat I wanted to bring up involves 2023 Michael Wacha. And at the end of April, his ERA was near 7. Okay, and tonight was start number 8 for Michael Wacha. It is May 9th, or by the time you are watching this, it is May 10th, because it's in the wee hours of the morning. But tonight was start number 8, and going into tonight, he had a 5.50 ERA. Last year, Michael Wacha made his 7th start of the year on May 9th. So 1 year ago today, Michael Wacha made his 7th start, and going in to that start, his ERA was 5.46. Eerily similar. Very, very similar to last year. Bad April. Had been shelled a couple of times in that month, and I think a lot of Padres fans were going, I don't know what you're going to expect from Michael Wacha the rest of the way. And then he caught fire. And over his next 11 starts, 7 of them were quality, and he only gave up 9 total runs over those next 11 starts. In fact, the second start that he made after that 7th start on May 9th, so after that May 9th start, 2 starts later, he faced the Royals and took that perfect game, I think it was, into the 8th inning before Michael Massey had broke it up. He had 11 Ks on that night. He really had found his groove and found his rhythm. And I thought tonight, the first 6 innings, that was the beginning of this could be what we become used to, of Michael Wacha working quickly again. He's getting ahead. The changeup is a great pitch. Now the velo looks good, but it does kind of suck that the 7th inning went that way. I really wish that leadoff walk didn't happen. I firmly believe that if that leadoff walk didn't happen, I'm sure it's 1-2-3 for Michael Wacha, and you have 7 shutout innings, and then you turn it over to Daniel Lynch or Matt Sauer for innings number 8 and inning 9. But it's still something you can build on because it was a quality start. And 6 of those innings, you're not just going to wash away or disregard because the 7th inning was really bad. He also was getting squeezed a little bit. There was a clear strike 3 called that Stu Sherwater behind home plate didn't give to him. And Wacha was really pissed about it. And that led to a run coming in because of a walk, and then he did it again. Then he's pulled, and maybe that was Mac Quatrero leaving him in too long. And I saw some fans that were questioning, why did he take out Lugo at 77 pitches, but leaving Wacha to go over 100 when he clearly was laboring? Well, Wacha didn't throw many pitches last time out. Lugo did. Lugo was coming off a long outing. Same with Singer. Michael Wacha got shelled against Texas and was out of it before the fourth inning or the fifth inning, whatever it was. So to me, it wasn't the worst. It was 9-0. And he had been so good all night that you just expect him to get a double play ball or strike out somebody and get back on the horse, get back into your rhythm and maybe give 6 1/3, 6 2/3, then you go to the bullpen. But tonight, 6 innings, 3-run ball. Offense gave him a big cushion. Can't really complain too much when coming into tonight, he had a 5.50 ERA. So if he can replicate what he did last year, this rotation still becomes, I think, one of the better ones in all of baseball because of what the rest are giving you. And even with a little bit of regression, you feel like they've got 5 workhorses right now. And one tomorrow is going to be returning in Alec Marsh, and that game will be on Apple TV. Frustrating because tonight was on national TV, FS1. Thought Jason Benetti and Dontrell Willis did a great job calling that game. Tomorrow will be on Apple TV. So if you have an Apple TV subscription, you will be able to watch this game. I do not believe it's going to be on Bally, but I would double check that. I think it's just on Apple TV Plus. So the Royals will be another streaming game. And I don't know why all of them are being thrown in this Angels series. They're also going to be on MLB Network for out-of-market fans on Saturday, I think it is. So they got stuff going on all weekend. But again, tonight they get it done 10-4 over the Angels. Michael Wacha gets a quality start. Dairon Blanco, Michael Garcia had 3 hit games. Benny Pasquantino hit a bomb in this one. And the bullpen wasn't great, but it was Matt Sauer and Daniel Lynch that were able to close things down to grab win number 23. They will look to go to 8 games over 500 for the first time since June 1st of 2016. Tomorrow night, it'll be Alec Marsh on the bump against Griffin Canning. Okay, let's take our final break of the show. And when we come back, let's talk about this 40-game mark, which is tomorrow. What can we take away from this start? And is it going to be something that lasts all season long? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we move on to our final segment, want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We also want to tell you a little bit about PrizePicks, and you need to be going and putting some money down now on some of your favorite baseball players out there because we know the season's officially underway. So don't miss your chance to add your favorite guys from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entries today. You can also get on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during basketball's postseason. Go get started today and have some fun with PrizePicks. Tomorrow is going to be the 40-game mark for the Kansas City Royals. And that is important because it's something I highlighted. I'm not saying that what I say is always important, but for this podcast, it's important because it is something we highlighted. Of 40 games is a decent sample size, right? I think that there have always been turnarounds. There have always been teams that blow up, even after great starts 40 games in. So I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all. But if the Royals win tomorrow, and I know it's a bad Angels team, but if they win tomorrow and they're 24-16 through 40 games, that would be 8 games over 500, maybe one step closer to being in first place in the Central. Cleveland lost tonight, so that puts them a game and a half back, tied with Minnesota. You just can't blink in this division right now. Detroit blinked, and they're 5 games back. So the Royals are neck and neck with Minnesota, who's won 15 of 17. Cleveland, they scuffle tonight against the Chicago White Sox of all teams, and this race is just getting more and more heated. But we also know that 40 games ain't going to win the division. And Michael Massey even said that after, I think it was the Blue Jays series on the road. He said, you don't win playoff games in May. You don't get to the playoffs in May. You got to keep going. You have to keep keeping your mind focused. You have to make sure that this is sustainable, that you're not going to look back in July and go, well, that was a fun start to the season, but we never really progressed past that. But 40 games is still 40 games. And I think it goes the same with players and what they're showing you right now. I think it shows what some of the pitchers are going to be like. And maybe if you want to dive into it a little bit deeper, it shows you how good your baseball team is going to be. And I know for a lot of you listening out there that the goal is just get to the playoffs, right? The realistic goal is either winning the division or getting to a wild card game. The optimistic side, right? There's still the pessimistic side of they're going to bottom out. They're not going to be any good. But, 40 games is, what would that be exactly? You're coming up on 25% of the season. That's not nothing is what I'm trying to get at. And if you want to go a little bit further, I wouldn't blame you. I know a lot of my friends say Memorial Day is when they put that hash mark, if you will, of this will tell me just how good they are. So 2 full months of the season, they're not going to, waver too far, from where they're at right now. If they're 5 games over 500, you're not going to look up in September and they're 25 games below. Like, that's just not going to happen. And that, I do think, is something I can take away 40 games in. I think right now, if they stay healthy, this Royals team is not going to lose 90 to 100 games. And that's not a hot take by any means. I'm not sticking my neck out there. I think the fact that they're 7 games over 500 tells me that they're going to have meaningful baseball this summer. How meaningful? That's really up for you to decide, or maybe up for this team to decide. If it's just that they're 500 and they're 5 games out of a wild card spot, well, each game matters. You get to 10 games back, you get to 15 games back, it's pretty much a pipe dream at that point. But you're within striking distance at 5 games. You can't really complain too much. That, to me, I think was goal number 1. I would say goal number 1 was treading water in April. They got that done against some really tough opponents. Step number 2, looking a little bit further into the schedule, was looking at the All-Star break. And I thought if the Royals were within 7 games of the All-Star break of any playoff spot, that was good. That was great for me. And that was lowballing it. But that was also before I knew this team would be 7 games over 500 in May. And we're nearing mid-May. You get to June. The 2021 Royals were 3 games above 500 in early June before it all fell apart, before it all collapsed. So just getting to June with a winning record isn't, the most special thing in the world. But I would love to know the last time the Royals were over 500 in April and May. Because the last time they were sub 500 was, I think, game 2 of that White Sox series, the second homestand of the year. So really, they were still under 500 in April. But after that 4-game sweep with the White Sox, they've never really looked back, now that I think about it. Because then they beat the Astros. They went on their 7-game winning streak, and they've been able to just stay above water, stay above 500. And that, to me, is what I'll take away and I'll define in this 40-game sample size. They have a top 5 run differential. In fact, after tonight, I'll need to go double check in the morning. They might be number 1 again or number 2 because they won by 6 runs. It's a big spike. It's a big jump. And they're tied with Texas for 6 games now this year, 10 or more runs. That doesn't even sound right, but I believe that's what Fox Sports 1 had up on the broadcast tonight. So they've had their feast or famine games. They've been able to bludgeon some bad teams. And, at firsthand, to be able to look at Major League Baseball tonight and Cleveland, first place team, loses the White Sox. Are we scoffing at the Royals winning 6 of 7 now? Oh, they aren't that good. They only beat up on the White Sox. Well, not everybody has been dominating. They've played better ball of late, so maybe the Royals got them at a good time. But to me, it's still going out there and winning baseball games, and that they did tonight against the Angels, winning game 1 in the West Coast road trip. Tomorrow, it'll be Alec Marsh against Griffin Canning. I was about to say Reed Detmers It'll be Griffin Canning going for the Angels tomorrow. He's got a 6.68 ERA. So hopefully another good night for the Royals offense. But as for us, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Before we say goodbye, one last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available for free on the Fire TV channels app. Well, tomorrow we're going to answer all of the questions that were sent in from our mailbag listeners. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.